Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tracy, and if you don't know me, I have a passion for upcycling clothing and I teach sewing on here. I'm so excited to finally bring you guys the sewing pattern for this Valentine's Day cutout dress. This pattern was highly requested. I made this red and black sparkly one that you guys loved with the fringe trim, so I wanted to take that detail and also mesh it with the purple silhouette, which was really similar to this one, but the skirt's more flared and I just love the back detail on it. So it's a combination of both. I made a digital sewing pattern for you guys and it's available on my Etsy shop. I have linked it down below. The materials needed for this dress are about 2 to 2.5 yards of any stretch fabric, and I love to use recycled material, so I like to go to the thrift store and I always look for like any fabric that just stretches in like both directions, and I found this dress and created this one. But for this pattern you only need a two-way stretch, so as long as it stretches in one direction you're fine. Just make sure you cut the pattern with the greatest stretch going across the body. I made this purple one and this is a two-way stretch fabric, so it only stretches around the body and not up and down, so feel free to use a two-way stretch. It'll work just fine. And for trims and hardware, I have linked some items down below for you guys, and you can find all sorts of hardware on Amazon. I just use like these belt buckle things and they turn out so cute. Like this one is a heart shape. The fringe trim is optional, but I absolutely love this detail. You can see that I used a combination of this rhinestone trim and this chain trim, and then I added some jump rings and heart charms. I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial, so let's get to it. Start by taking your fabric or the garment you're going to upcycle, and I'm just cutting the sleeves of this dress and cutting at the side seam so I can get the most out of the fabric. And now you can just cut out all of your pattern pieces and just make sure the greatest stretch is going across the body. I start by cutting out my front skirt, and I didn't have enough fabric to cut my front skirt on the fold, so I ended up just deciding to do an overlapping effect at the front skirt. So I just cut out two front pieces and overlapped them, and you can see how the final piece with both layers on top of each other, that it mimics that one full front skirt. So if you're like me and you're upcycling something and don't have enough fabric, you're able to just do this effect. And don't forget that you can also patchwork fabric in order to get the full pattern cut out on the fold. And then I cut out my back skirt, so I was able to cut that on the fold. My favorite tool for cutting any fabric is just using a rotary cutter instead of scissors, because I always end up with such smooth, clean lines versus like jagged edges with my regular scissors. And then I just used the sleeves of this dress to just cut out my cup pieces and my back wings. The cup will be lined as well as the back wing, so you need 4 pieces total. And now that you've cut out your main fabric and your lining, you can just take your back wing and your cup and place right sides together at that side seam, line it up and just pin everything in place and just repeat it to the lining. Now take it to your sewing machine. I decided to use the overlock machine to sew the side seam, but feel free to use a regular sewing machine. So the purple dress, I used just a regular straight stitch machine for that dress, and the garment stretches perfectly fine. So if you don't have an overlock machine, don't stress. My back strap was already pre-made, but I included the pattern, so you're going to cut that piece on the fold and then just place right sides together, overlock, and turn it right side out, and you end up with a strap. So you're going to take this back strap and just place it at that intersection where the cup meets the wing, and just mark that seam allowance so you know exactly where to place that back strap. So you just want to line it up right at the edge and then just pin both sides down. After pinning the back strap in place, take those 2 front halter straps. So I've included the sewing pattern, so you're going to cut that out, place right sides together and sew 1/4 inch and turn it right side out. And find the intersection, so mark the seam allowance first, and then you're going to take that strap and just line it up going towards the neckline and just pin it into place. Now you can take your lining, place it right on top, with right sides facing each other and everything pinned on the inside. So we're going to be encasing all of those straps. After pinning the armhole and the front neckline, just take it to the sewing machine and sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when you get to that intersection, just pivot and just keep sewing. And you're going to get that really nice point when you turn it right side out, and just give everything a good press. And before we add the hardware to the cups, we're going to fold the bottom hem of the cup seam allowance up. So just pin the 1/4 inch seam allowance up, and then you can just pin the center front and just take it to the sewing machine. We need to just sew this down so the main fabric and the lining are attached. I overlocked my raw ends, and now you're going to take your cup and make sure those ends of the seam allowance are folded inside towards each other. So I place a pin. Then I just wrap a 1/4 inch seam allowance towards the back, and then just take a needle and thread and just do a hand stitch. And I just keep hand sewing and pushing a little bit more fabric into the ring and some seam allowance towards the back, and just hand sewing until I reach the end. And as you can see, it all just starts to just gather, and you can just remove all of those excess threads. Now for the skirt, just take your front skirt and your back skirt and just place right sides together, pin the side seams and sew that with 1/4 inch seam allowance. But since my skirt has those front overlapping layers, I first have to overlock the front skirt hem and the back skirt hem just so I could fold that seam allowance underneath, and then pin the front skirts together, and then I can place the back skirt on top, pin the side seams, and then take it to the sewing machine, and then I just do a straight stitch and overlock the raw edges. And now that the skirt is sewn together, we just need to hem that front skirt cutout. And on the purple dress, all I did was just overlock it and fold it down a 1/4 inch and then just do a top stitch. So I recommend hemming it this way, but I ended up hemming it differently. I just took both front skirt pieces since mine overlap, and then I just placed right sides together and just overlocked that. And now you can join the bodice to the front skirt. So just line up those side seams and the notches and just place right sides together and pin everything into place. And before doing this step, I do recommend that you just overlock your skirt and your cut pieces. I just forgot to do that, but I recommend you overlock ahead of time and then sew this with 1/4 inch seam allowance. See, I ended up just overlocking after. And then you can just hem that back neckline. Now to hem the dress, just overlock the hem if you have an overlock machine. If you don't worry about it, but just fold and pin a 1/4 inch and just give it a good press, and then take it to your sewing machine and just do a top stitch. To hem the bottom of the cup, remember how we folded that seam allowance towards the inside, so you're just going to keep doing that all the way towards the bottom of that bottom bust, and then just pin it in place and just baste it so it's easier to take it to your sewing machine without pins in the way. Take it to your sewing machine and do like an 1/8 of an inch top stitch, so really close to the edge. If you're hand sewing trim at the underbust, make sure the garment is on a dress form or a piece of cardboard so it is stretched as you're hand sewing. I'm just taking this trim and just hand sewing each individual rhinestone fringe by hand, and then just removing that excess tulle and net that it was attached to. Then I cut the rhinestone fringe to my desired length. I had this chain trim and I just removed some chain and just hand sewed some onto this. And in every other slot, I ended up just adding a jump ring and some more jump rings with like a heart charm at the end, and it turned out so cute. Feel free to customize your own fringe trim or just not add any if you don't want it. And here's how the final dress turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. As a big thank you for the first 24 hours, I'm giving you guys 24% off this sewing pattern, so don't forget to use the discount code down below. If you guys do recreate this dress, don't forget to tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your final dresses. And please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really is the best way to support your favorite creators for free. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.